James, we are 10 years into the economic cycle in the US. I think we are approaching the longest ever expansion. $1 million question or multi-trillion dollar question, if you will.
Absolutely.
How long do you see it continuing?
Really the key indicator for me, the very beating heart, if you like, of the economic cycle is unemployment. And at the moment, we don't really see unemployment rising anywhere. And that tells us that as we sit here today and possibly for the next few months, we don't look like we're teetering on the edge of a recession just yet. I have to be honest, if you put a gun to my head, I would have thought by next year we really will be, if not there, very close.
What's the bond market telling us right now? I mean, you're very actively involved in this on a daily basis.
Yes, I think the bond market is telling us a few things. I think the bond market is telling us that we don't believe that central banks are able to generate inflation. Even with 10 years of aggressive monetary support and stimulus, low interest rates, quantitative easing. So now we're coming to the end of the cycle, whenever that may be. The bond market is saying, well, if you couldn't generate inflation to now, the chances are inflation is going to be lower in the future.
And when the next recession hits, how much firepower do central banks even have to really stimulate the economy from here?
Essentially none, which is one of the biggest concerns, actually, because there's not a lot of fiscal room either. Most central banks haven't been able to tighten after all of the easing post the 2008 crisis. And so there is very little room in aggregate. There's no room in certain regions. The Eurozone is an obvious case. The Federal Reserve probably has roughly half as much room as they would normally have going into a recession.
And of course, sitting here in London, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about Brexit, and even just how you approach something as uncertain as Brexit as an investor.
The way that I would approach investing always is to think about the world probabilistically. And it's about understanding what the market expects, understanding where the risks to that view are, and understanding how you think markets will move in those various scenarios, and therefore where you're being rewarded to take on risks. And I think actually it's becoming more difficult, partly because even some of the things which you might think are fixed, such as parliamentary procedure and the very basic structures of the UK Constitution and how parliamentary sovereignty is applied, are being flexed. So it's essentially about de-risking until you feel that either the market has created an opportunity or there is greater clarity about the process.